Ladies and gentlemen, today is a special day. So, by popular request, by some of my few subscribers that I have, and by Facebook friends, I was asked to show off all of my equipment. So today, that's what we're gonna do. This is gonna be a long one. Strap in. So first thing we'll talk about is electric guitars, because I feel like that's kind of what everyone wants to hear about. So let's start right here. This one's one of my workhorses. I use this one all the time. I love it to death. It is my Fender Telecaster. It's a Mexican standard, or it kind of sort of is now. I've done a few things to it. Really only one thing notable though. I replaced the nut with a Tusk nut, because the one that came on it, the strings would catch and the height was wrong. So I took that off and replaced the nut on it. Haven't done anything to the neck, it's just fret level and crown, normal stuff. Put a black pick guard on it, but most notably, I took the bridge off and replaced it with a left-handed bridge. So the pickup angle is now this way rather than that way. And I was inspired to do that when I would listen to Jimi Hendrix and I heard his tone. And because he held a Strat upside down, incidentally, that's how his pickup angle would have been. And after swapping that on the Telly, it sounded great. It added a lot more pop to the bottom strings and mellowed out the top three a bit more. So that did it a lot of good. So that is the Telecaster. Now we'll go over here into this case. And this one, if I can get the case to stay open, is my Strat. So this one is one of the modern player Strats. Oh, and for the record, I know what you guys are thinking. Oh, he just bought all the mid-range guitars just because they had the names on them. Yes, I did buy a bunch of mid-ranged Fenders, but the reason for that is because I couldn't justify spending $600 to $800 more for a guitar that, to me, feels and sounds pretty much the same. But moving on, a couple things to note about this guitar is it's got a very thin neck profile. It's not a fat neck at all, so it plays very, very fast, which I like. It had a gloss finish on the fingerboard, or not the fingerboard, excuse me, on the neck, which I wet sanded down and to basically get rid of that because I like a satin finish neck a bit better. This guitar has two humbuckers. It's kind of hard to see because of the color of it, but it's two humbuckers and a single coil in the middle. And I'd been looking for a Strat like that for a long, long, long time. And it might appear black in this light, but it's actually, let's see if I can get it to show up on camera. Maybe just a little, but it's really a very, very dark, transparent black color. You can see the grain through the finish very faintly, but it's definitely there. Again, you got the clover, and you got the old school top-loading tuners. So the, excuse me, the 70 style ones. I leave this guitar tuned half step down, so I use this when I do like Stevie Ray Vaughan covers or Jimi Hendrix covers, and things like that. There you go, you can kind of see some of the grain there now. Better lighting. So there's the Strat. Alright, now I'll move on to this guy. So those are my two Fenders you just saw. Now we're going to move on to something a little bit differently. In this case here is my Gibson Les Paul Studio. This is possibly my favorite electric. I play this one probably more than any of the others. This and my Telecaster are my two main ones. But as you can see, this is kind of neat. I've got a Clover truss rod cover on there. And that's kind of neat. I have a company in Philadelphia who makes those for me. I will post a link to their website in the description, and you can get some cool custom engraved truss rod covers for yourself. Like I said, it is a studio. It's not a standard. It's just a regular maple top. There's no quilting or flames or anything. It's just satin finish, which I prefer. I kind of like it a little bit more basic. I'm not one for a lot of flare and flash on my guitars. A little bit of wear by that bridge pickup a little bit. That was there since I bought it. I got this guy used. So that's the Les Paul Studio there. Now moving on, I've got my Epiphone 335, or the Dot as it's officially named. And this guy is not quite what it was when I first bought it. Didn't come with a case, had to buy that separately, but the pickups are not what was originally in there. In the neck position, there's a Seymour Duncan JB, and in the bridge position, there's a Seymour Duncan 59. That really helped out the tone a lot. The pickups that were stock in there just sounded kind of dead to me. Completely rebuilt the harness. It's not even the same harness that was in there. A completely new one was built, rewired, all American pots. So none of that is the cheap Chinese Epiphone stuff. Toggle switch is new and everything. I had to completely rewire it because it had wiring problems when I got it, which was disappointing, but rather than send it in for warranty to have them fix the already crappy electronics, I figured why not just pimp the thing out. So now it's a beast. It's got a lot of highs, a lot of lows. I'm not a big guy on mid-range response, and it does a good job of, not putting too much focus on the mid-range. So it's a good sounding guitar, especially for the sound I was going for with it. Plus, it's just sexy. Then we'll move on to my newest acquisition, which I received yesterday, which a few of my Facebook friends really wanted to see, and that's this guy here. This is my Gibson Les Paul Jr. So we just got this guy. He said it's Junior, if I can get it in the light. There we go. Gibson Les Paul Jr. This one was made in 2011. I think this is one of the limited run ones that only Guitar Center had in 2011. It's gonna be hard to see on there, but that's when it was dated. But this one is kind of cool because it has a humbucker in it versus like a P90 or an H90. So that's one thing that was really appealing to me. It's a single piece bridge, not like the Tune-o-matics or anything. It's one of the pre-intonated bridges, or innotated or intonated or whatever. I think it's intonated. I can never say it right. And it's got kind of the cool banjo looking tuners, which I dig. And yeah, this is a cool little guitar. Like I said, I just got it yesterday, and I was super happy with it. I leave this guy tuned half step down as well. So yeah, that's the new Les Paul Jr. And let me get this guy put back. Hard to do with one hand. There we go. One more electric I have in my arsenal here is this Strat here. It was a Squier slash a Fender slash a Warmoth, and it still kind of is. The neck is a Warmoth neck. Tuners are Godos. Nut is Tusk. Pickups are Seymour Duncan somethings. I can't remember what they were. The body was from a Squier, and the pick guard was from a Mexican Standard. So it's a parts guitar. It's definitely a parts guitar. I don't use this one a whole lot, but it's kind of cool to have. It's one of the first guitars I really put together and did all the work on myself. I leave this one tuned to standard and drop D. I use this for like 1 or 2 songs usually, so I don't get a ton of use out of it, but it is a cool thing to have. So next, we're gonna check out basses. All right, bass guitars. This is kind of where I got my start. I started off as a bass player. That was the first instrument I learned how to play and I took seriously. I've not got as many of these, but that seems to be a trend with bass players, is that you don't get nearly as many. And you'll notice I don't have a bunch of different models. You'll see that in a second here. So we open up this guy, and this was my main bass for a long time. This is well, again, it's a parts bass. I had a Squier that looked identical to it. It had, the stickers are the same as it was on the Squier I used to have, but the Squier just didn't sound good. Or didn't sound as good, I should say, and it had some neck problems. So I had a neck lying around from Fender, the regular Mexican P-bass neck, so it'll say made in Mexico, even though I put it together in this basement we're currently in. It is an Agathis body, which is super duper lightweight, which I like. The pickups are Seymour Duncans. I don't remember what they are. I think they were, I don't think they were the vintage P-bass pickups, but they're not Antiquities either. And they're not quarter pounders. I'm doing process of elimination, but I can't remember what they are. It's got a Stormtrooper sticker, which I became very known for, to have this on my bass. Standard bridge. It's not like any high mass or like the Badass 2 or anything like that. But it's a really good sounding bass. It feels really, really nice, plays really, really well. This has been one of my standbys and one that I use all the time that I've been using for quite a while now. So this is one of my favorites. We'll go on now to another one, and this one's kind of neat because I got it for nothing. Gentleman came to me and said, do you know anything about this bass? How much is it worth? And he brought it to me, and the pick guard was disconnected. The pickups, the wiring was completely severed, so there was no connections or anything. I think it was a Squier at one point. It looks like the name on the headstock was sanded off, and actually on camera it almost looks like I can see it. Yeah, I think it's a Squier. So I think it was a Squier at one point. But we went ahead and I rewired in the pickups, put new pots in and everything. Had all that done. All of my wiring stuff actually I do through the music store that I work at. Our tech there does all the wiring stuff for me because that's not my specialty. So he takes care of all that and does a fantastic job. He did the wiring on this and he did it on my Epiphone. And they both came out beautifully. So that's the story there, and like I said, I got it for nothing, and the guy gave me a bunch of sets of strings too because he had no use for them. He said he found them in his basement of the previous owner, and he called the owner, asked if he wanted them, said no, so I got a bass for free. Oh, and I also had to replace the nut on this one, so that's another Tusk nut. The cases didn't come with it or anything. This was just an ultralight foam case we had at work. So there's that one. This right here, this one here is a legend. This is the first serious instrument I ever owned. As you can see there in my 3rd grade handwriting, that's what I named her, Rosa. This is a Squier Bronco bass. It was the first instrument I ever had. It's 2-saddle bridge, oddly enough, which makes it extremely hard, and there next to impossible to intonate. And I've got Sharpie marker all over it. Thought I was kind of cool. I still like it. It looks neat. Let's see that. One of them means I think parkour because I used to be really into that. Obviously there's the hippie sign. One of those is a martial art that I studied. That's a smiley face. There's another clover. As you can see, it's missing the knobs and I don't have jam nuts on them, so those are just sitting there. Pickup screws are just ones I found around the house that kind of sort of fit. It's got no frets right now. Those are just the lines of where the frets used to be. They're different tuners. This bass has been ripped apart and torn apart, and yeah, this one's been through a lot of abuse, but it's the one I've had longer than anything else. It's the one instrument that still stands from my original collection of like 5 or 6 instruments. And then we've got one more, which is the bass I use more often than anything else in terms of basses, and it is the older Fender Mexican-made Mike Dirnt precision bass. I used to have the Squier one. You saw a review for that on my channel on here a couple years ago, and that was a great bass. Only downside to it was that I didn't really like the neck, or I grew to not like the neck as much. It felt just a little too wimpy for a bass to me. And the Fender Mike Dirnt bass has a nice fat feeling neck, which fits my hand really, really well. Pickup on this is a Seymour Duncan Antiquity. Originally it was a 59, I think is what they put in these things, stock, Fender 59. But I put in, or I had our tech put in a Seymour Duncan Antiquity in here, and it sounds absolutely fantastic. And this has quickly become my main bass. So those are basses. Next, let's check out acoustic guitars. We'll use this as a bit of a transition piece for a bit backlit here. So we are in my basement. I don't keep all my stuff down here, but it's easier to display if I brought them down. So that's how we're doing it. This is my Fender acoustic bass. I don't get a lot of opportunities to use it, although I wish I did. It's a lot of fun to play. It's got good bass response for having such a small body, actually. Good action on it. I was able to set it up to play really, really nicely. And it's got a Fishman pickup in it with a built-in tuner and all that cool jazz. If it would just focus, there we go. So it's a cool bass, mahogany back and sides, spruce top. It's kind of neat, but I wish I got to play it more. Now, acoustic guitars. All right, acoustic guitars. I use acoustic guitars more than I use anything else, and that is predominantly because when I play music, I am a singer-songwriter and I'm a solo act. So the majority of what I do is acoustic. So actually, let's start off with this little guy right here. This actually isn't even a guitar, to be fair. This is my ukulele. It is a Kala butterfly ukulele. I've got a low G on there. It is tenor sized, Chakotay, back and sides. It's all laminate, but it still, and it's dark. Still sounds really, really good. It looks beautiful with the wood grain and stuff on it. It's got a nice bassy sound to it, which I like. And yeah, that's my ukulele. It's got an arch back on it for good bass response. So I like that guy a lot. So that's that. Now, this was the first proper 6-string I ever bought myself. It's a Fender CD280 acoustic. Right now this has become kind of my slide guitar. The action's super high. The fretboard is just torn apart because of all the refrets I've had to do to it. It's got, again, this one has a Fishman pickup on it. And kind of hard to see. Sorry about the bad lighting. The light bulbs in my basement are not very powerful. But, let's see here. There we go. So yeah, there's that. And that's that. Rosewood back and sides, solid spruce top. And that's kind of a neat one. So I had that one for several years. I played my first few gigs on that. Boy, this camera doesn't want to focus. But that was one of the first I've had. So now, move over here to my Takamine. There we go, focusing. Now this one is the priciest, highest end guitar I own. And it's for good reason. It's a gorgeous guitar. Came with this hard case. This Takamine is the P3NY. It's got a slotted headstock like old school guitars did. A lot of classicals do today. This has a cedar top, Sapele back and sides, with the top being solid and the back being solid. Sides are still laminate. It is a parlor sized, meets at the 14th fret. Cool bridge system here. It's a split saddle, so it's intonated a little bit better. As opposed to a single saddle with a compensated bridge. This just holds tune a wee bit better. And it's got the pinless system, which is nice because everyone loses those. So that's a cool thing to have. This one's kind of become my finger style guitar because the fretboard is a little bit wider than the majority of acoustics. So it's got good space for me to fit my fingers in between the strings to do chicken picking and things like that. So that's one of my favorites. That's my Takamine. Now we'll move on to these three. These three are my Martins. So in here, we've got, pull it out here. My little Martin LX1, the little baby-sized one. Now, I originally bought one that didn't have any electronics in it. I went ahead and installed, if you can see it there, a Fishman Sonotone pickup in it in case I ever wanted to use it live. This is one of my go-tos because it's so convenient. It comes everywhere with me because of its size, and it came with a super nice gig bag. So that is a cool little guy. It's a solid spruce top, high pressure laminate, mahogany back and sides. So now, move on to the big brothers. In this gig bag here, we've got one of the Martin, if I can get it out. One of the Martin Custom X guitars. This one is all high pressure laminate, hence the all black finish. It's got a black Richlite bridge, black Richlite saddle, black Richlite fingerboard, black head cap, Stratobond neck, it's her name, Jackie. And I leave this one actually tuned a full step down to D standard. I do a few songs tuned that way, and you've seen this in one of my videos. So this is another one of my main acoustics. This one comes to a lot of gigs if I ever want to play those songs, because this one has that tuning. And my last acoustic here, I'm sorry about all the camera cutouts, it's battling with me today. This one is my Martin DX1 RAE. It is a full dreadnought, solid spruce top, high pressure laminate back and sides to mimic rosewood. This one has a super nice playability, super nice neck on it. The action is like non-existent, and I still get plenty of bass response out of it. As you can see, that Clover's getting torn apart because I played this guitar probably more than any of my others. This one comes to like all of my gigs with me. It's got one of the Stradibon necks, and this one might be my favorite guitar I own. I love this thing to death. Is electric. It's got a Fishman Sonotone pickup in it. So next up, we're gonna go on to my folk instruments. All right, folk instruments. So we'll start here. Not my Les Paul Jr. In this little guy, something neat I picked up. This is a Seagull dulcimer guitar. It's probably way out of tune because I haven't picked it up in about a week. But it's tuned to an open G. That's how I tune it. And the fret spacing, you'll notice, is kind of funky, and that's because every note is a part of a major scale. So you actually are unable to play this wrong. It's a neat little thing, super thin body, maple fretboard, spruce, was it spruce top, maple back and sides, I believe it is. Yeah, it's a cool little thingy. Well, not the most practical instrument I own. Oops. Not the most practical instrument I own, but it is certainly a fun one. So moving on now, we have got my Gretsch resonator here. I got this one super duper cheap. Kind of just got it just because I wanted a resonator, but it does sound pretty good for being like a $200, $300 guitar. It's a lot of fun to have, good bass response. I leave this one tuned to an open D or D standard, usually. That's kind of a cool thing. Mahogany all the way around, and it's got that cool perloid headstock with the really cool Gretsch logo on it. And then we've got this banjo, which I don't know anything about. I can't find any serial numbers on it, not inside the resonator, not on the back. The only weird indicator I have as to what it might be is that eagle on the back there. And even that, I wasn't able to find anything. So, if anyone watching this video knows anything about that, let me know, because I don't know a thing about this banjo. I did a little bit of a setup on it. The truss rod cover cracked, and the truss rod was a little unresponsive, so I couldn't give it a perfect setup, but I shaved down the bridge and flattened the neck as best I could and did a fret level, and it sounds and feels pretty good. I'm not very good at banjo. I'm trying to get better, but it's a cool thing to have. So those have been my folk instruments, and that's the majority of the... No, that's all the instruments now, actually. So you guys have seen all of it. Right, so you've seen all my instruments, so now I'm going to show you my practice space. This is where I do my rehearsing and practicing. That is a bunch of tools and stuff that I use. That is a leak in the wall that I am attending to. Don't worry about that bass, it doesn't function. I'm probably just gonna take it apart. I've already stripped it for parts, so it's not anything special. In that box I've got a bunch of parts for stuff that I'm not gonna use for anyone else's because it's all beat up and I wouldn't sell it to anybody. But I've got tools and stuff up on this shelf. It's quite untidy at the moment, so forgive me for that. But that's where I keep most of my tools for fixing things and modifying things and whatnot. And then for mics, I'm using actually on-stage microphones, believe it or not. I had a couple Shure SM58s that I used for a long time. They stopped working, and I just got a couple of these because they came with the tripods for like 40 bucks. You got the mic, the tripod, and the cable. And I thought they were going to be garbage, but they sound great. They sound just like my SM58s did. So these are actually what I've been using for gigging and things. So I've got this one here coming down and running into that little guy. So with this, when I'm running, this is a Boss RC30 dual track looper. Focus. There we go. So this is what I use for looping. This is going through my acoustic chain, so this goes straight into my PA. It doesn't go through any instrument amps, and there's no other effects in this chain. This just goes straight to my PA. So with this, I would run my mic, which is this cable here, running into that, and then this is my line out going into my PA. And then I would just put an instrument cable in here and run my guitar through it, so I can do vocal looping and instrument looping. And then this mic here, this guy, is going all into the PA setup over there. And we'll get into that. But my pedal board is extremely simple because I don't like having a lot of pedals. Pedals are cool, but I don't like taking up space with stuff I use for one song. So at the front of the chain here, got my Dunlop original wah that I use for a few tunes. It's probably my least used one. Sometimes I use it when I go into a lead, but for the most part it's just for basically Voodoo Child, Sweet Child of Mine, and a few other tunes. Here's a compressor sustainer that is almost never on. If anything, I just use it as a bit of a clean boost from time to time. I just raise the peak volume a little bit, that's why the level is so high. Even then, sometimes I won't use it. Sometimes just for the room, it sounds better to have a little bit more compression. And then these are the two pedals that get used all the time. The Blues Driver is almost always on when I'm using any sort of dirty tone. So like if I was playing like a Stevie kind of thing and I was playing a rhythm part, it would usually just be the Blues Driver on, or sometimes it'll be both of them on for a rhythm part, but I'll just dial the volume back on my guitar. But if I'm just doing like a clean or a slightly dirty rhythm, I'll have that on. And when I go into leads, they're both on. The DS1 is never on its own. If this is on, so is the Blues Driver. More often than not, they're both on, and I just dial the volume back on my guitar, however. So those are the two most used ones. And that is all running into that guy. It's my Fender Hot Rod Deluxe. So one of the slightly older ones. It's still got the silver, or the chrome top rather. It's kind of dark, so I apologize. But it's got the chrome top on it as opposed to the black ones that they now have. Mine, I put a green gem light in as opposed to a red one because I think it looks better. And yeah, that's my main amp. You've got two inputs on it. There's a normal and bright switch. Mine stays on normal. Volume's dialed way back for now because I'm just playing at home. The drive knob doesn't do anything because I never use the dirty channels on here. That's my EQ. I like a lot of bottom to it. Reverb very, very low. Again, I apologize, it's hard to read, but it's because of the chrome. And presence is cranked because I like to cut through a lot. And you've got a few things I don't use here. I don't use the power amp in, I don't use the preamp out. Don't use the foot switch because again, I don't use the other channels, even though it is a 3-channel amp. And there's your on and your standby. And for my bass amp that I practice with down here, I'm running this Fender Rumble 30. It's one of the older ones, but it actually sounds really good. It's a 2-channel. It's got an overdrive channel and a clean channel. It stays on clean 98.99% of the time. Not a lot to say about it. 2 inputs. It is a single speaker, 2-channel, like I said, 30 watts, solid state. It's good for practice. I use it in small rooms that I gig with, but if the room's any bigger than maybe a coffee house kind of thing, I will bust out my bigger bass amp, which we will get to. And then for PA, I have these two things. I have 2 PowerWorks PW50 speakers here. They're both 50 watts, 2 speakers each, 3 channels. So usually it'll just be my mic and my guitar running through it, or a mic and then my looper, which will run both a guitar and a mic, then run in stereo to use as a house PA if wherever I'm playing doesn't have their own PA system. Other than that, I just use it as home PA to listen to music while I'm playing or practicing, to listen to tracks, or if I want to play a loop, these go on. And that is my setup there. Other than that, there's really only one other thing to show you guys, and that's not down here with the rest of my stuff, and I wasn't going to carry it. So I will go upstairs, and I will show you what that is now. So first off, I apologize about the mess here. I never come in this room anymore. This used to be the practice room, but I moved all that down. But this is the main bass amp if I need to take something out for gigging, because it's got the power behind it. This is a Sidekick Bass 50. Fender hasn't made these for years, but I got this with my first bass as a gift. So I've had it for a while, and to this date it is still the best sounding and most powerful bass amp I have. So if I ever need enough power that Rumble 30 doesn't push out, this is what I go to. There's just a little Simmons electronic kit that I don't really touch too much, but I do practice on a few times a week. Don't do much recording with it, but it's good to practice on. And yeah, that is all my gear. So thank you guys for watching. Subscribe if you want to see some more. I have 2 channels now. This is my gear channel, and I also have a music channel. So if you guys would do that, that would be awesome, and I will see you in the next video.